Hey guys, and a big warm welcome to today's episode. I am so excited for you to dive into this interview with Laura Behnke. So I am Carys Anderson. I am your host, your coach, and your mate on this lovely journey. And we talk about health, fitness, wellness, and mindset over here on my channel and my podcast. So make sure you subscribe never to miss an episode. So this interview with Laura is so interesting. She was a TV sports reporter in a totally male-dominated industry, and we really talk about busting the expectations from society for women and living your own life and being on your own path. It's an incredible interview. Make sure you keep listening right to the end because she drops a bombshell at the end, and it's emotional and it's wonderful, and I cannot wait for you to hear it. So without further ado, enjoy this lovely episode of the Bliss and Thrive podcast. Okay, a huge welcome to the podcast, Laura Behnke. And Laura is an expectation coach, a podcast host herself. So be expecting some professional podcasting skills from Laura today. And we're going to have a good old chit chat, get to know Laura. And I really think that her story is going to inspire a lot of people. And I think a lot of people are going to find it really familiar as well. So welcome to the show, Laura. How are you, my love?
Oh, thank you so much for having me. And thank you for that lovely introduction. I am doing great. I am so excited to officially meet you. Well, over a podcast, but still to have a chance to chat with you today. So happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh, you're so welcome. So you are an expectations coach and like a life coach to women. So how did you get into that? What is it? And, what's the origin story of Laura?
Well, how much time do you have?
We've got loads of time. We're having a cup of tea. We've got loads of time.
Wonderful. Well, I spent 16 years actually in TV. I was a sports anchor and reporter working all over the United States, various markets. I absolutely loved it. I loved the fact that I was working in a male-dominated industry as a woman and having to, really kind of pave the way and do all of that fun stuff. It was wonderful, but I got to this point where I really started to realize how TV, and this was my experience, everyone's experience is unique, but how TV was so geared around image. And not only how you looked and how you dressed and how you spoke, but also who you were, who you are. And so I began to realize just how much of this Laura persona that I had was TV Laura, and how much I was not allowing real Laura to be able to come through. And because I was trying to be perfect, trying to constantly be perfect. And meanwhile, here I am, pretty successful in my TV career, but personally, I was single. I was in my mid-30s. I had actually never had a relationship in my life. And I was convinced there was something completely wrong with me. And I was so embarrassed. I was so embarrassed that here I am, I'm putting out this like perfect image of who I want the viewers and the world to see me as. And yet my truth, I was so scared for anyone to know about. I thought people would judge me. Oh, she's never had a boyfriend? Like, well, what's wrong with her? I mean, that's society has some lovely ways of trying to define people. And so often we define people based on their relationship status and their relationship experience. And I was well aware of that. So this was my secret. This was my huge secret that I took with me. And when I finally did meet my husband, when I was 35 and a half, and I always say the half because when you get to that age and you have these pressures that you have put on yourself about what you should be doing and where you should be in life, each month, you feel it, you totally feel it. So I was 35 and a half when I met my husband, first relationship I ever had. And being in that space and being supported by him helped me to really start to support myself, to kind of really look at things like, why was I so afraid of who I was? And I realized that I was so afraid of who I was because there just was no support out there that was the
Yeah.
support that I needed. The only thing that a single woman can find, and it's still so hard to find something other than this today, is how to find a husband, how to get a
Yeah.
date, how to get a second date, what you're doing wrong that makes you not get that first date, why your online profile is ruining your chances, why you are going to die alone. Like
God.
all, all of these messages that you hear and that I had just so internalized. And in turn, you're
Mm.
basically being told, well, something's wrong with you. Because if
Yeah.
you're single, we're going to help you fix it. It has to be fixed. And I was so tired of that messaging, when what I really needed was somebody to just be like, yeah, this is hard. It's really hard when you don't have the thing that you thought you would have and that you want to have so badly, but it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. And let's talk about the life you do have. Let's talk about the life you have created. And so I started talking to women, and I started to actually start sharing my story and being honest about the fact that I had never had a relationship. And here I was, I got married at 38. None of this was the way I planned it to be. And suddenly started hearing so many other women saying, oh my gosh, my story isn't
Mm.
exactly like yours, but I relate to that.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I decided, I'm tired of talking to predominantly men about sports. I'm ready to start having conversations with women who understand the pressures that we're facing and who aren't necessarily sure what to do about it, but are ready to have these open dialogues and are ready to start talking about our actual experiences. So, when we say I'm now an expectation coach, like I'm all about busting these expectations and
Right. Yeah.
helping us normalize that there is no normal, if that makes sense. There's no one way to live a life. There's no one way to go from A to B. There's no one B. Like there are so many different ways to be happy, and so many different ways that we can be carving out lives that we are proud of, that we are feeling fulfilled in.
Mm.
And all too often, society just does not support the life path that isn't gets married, has kids, and then, maybe continues, goes off and has a kick-ass career and has, all of these things that are coming into play, and that they happen in this pattern when they're supposed to.
Yeah.
We need to break that up. We need to say enough is enough. And there are so many different ways that we can be happy and have success. So that's my long-winded answer to that question.
I love it. I love that answer. And do you know what? It's just so refreshing to hear a different journey, a different story. And I bet that's what you've encountered along the way, that women are like, oh my God, yeah, me too. I haven't done that either. And
Yes.
I think that it's like a weight off when you feel like you don't have those expectations of your life. Like, it's what society lays out for you, what your parents lay out for you, but it's also what you lay out for yourself.
Yeah.
You're like, I'm going to be a mum by the time I'm 25, and I'm going to do this by the time I'm this age, and la 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 la. And of course, as women, we have a body clock.
Yep. Yep.
And it's like weighs down, weighs down, weighs down. And it's like, I haven't done this by this date, this imaginary date that you have actually created for yourself, that, by the pressure of the world. So it's just like, woof. I bet everyone who speaks to you is like, whoa, weight off my shoulders. Like,
Yeah,
refreshing.
it's so nice to be able to talk about it in this way, instead of, and there are so many people out there who are relationship coaches or dating coaches, and nothing against what they do, but I'm tired of talking to women, like especially single women, that the only positive result we can get from working on ourselves is that it'll end up with a relationship.
Yeah.
Because
When we
don't
fix
know.
you, we'll
Yes.
be able to fix you up with someone.
Exactly. Exactly.
How?
That's the only happy ending that comes from this, is you with a partner. And that's just so, and if that's what you want, if you want a partner, then by all means, that's wonderful. And that is a great thing to be searching for and to be hoping for. But it doesn't mean it's the only goal you can have. It's the only
Mm.
way to be happy, to have success. There are all these things you'll see out there, like 6 weeks to finding your soulmate. And all it is, all these ways to fix yourself and to fix the way you feel about yourself. And, to get to this higher level of self-understanding and self-knowledge. And then
Mm.
then you're going to be able to manifest the person and they come into your life and everything is great. And it's like, well, what if we do those things, but we don't have to have the person come into our life immediately at that point? Because how do we control that? Like, really, how do we actually control that? So instead, that can be a great goal. And I truly believe that anyone who wants to find a solid, loving relationship that works for them, that it will happen. I
Mm.
just can't tell you when.
No, and there's no time limit on it, I
No,
think.
nope,
Yeah.
there is not. So how do we find happiness? How do we find contentment in the meantime? And how do we
Mm.
start looking at our life instead of being single as a temporary phase that we are just always trying to get out of, and to actually instead enjoy what's happening around us and what the life is that we've built. We have done all of this. Like,
Yeah.
that's pretty amazing. And instead we're being told, oh no, try and just get on to the next. So
Yes.
I want to press pause, and I want us to be able to, and even if you are married and now you think I'm supposed to be having kids and it's not happening for you for whatever reason, the same feelings come into play. And just, there's nothing wrong with any of us. We are not broken. We do not need to be fixed. We just might not be meeting the expectations that we set for ourselves, that we just came up with out of nowhere.
Yeah.
There's no manual that's telling you you have to do this, but that's what we internalize and that's what we tell ourselves.
I think that the kids one is a big thing, because we do have, as women, that body clock, which now with medical advances doesn't necessarily exist anymore so much, but we still have that nature against us. And I think that one is like, it's like a race. Well, I have to be married by that time because I'm gonna have kids by that time. I think that's one that a lot of people can relate to. But I want to circle back round, actually, back to the beginning, because I'm really interested to know actually what it was like for you working in a completely like male dominated space, and how that kind of shaped who you are today and the path you're on. Because sports, number one, I'm guessing that's mostly men, and in that kind of, world in TV and everything. And what was that like being a female, and also hiding the fact that you're kind of hiding your true self, as you said there, hiding
Yeah.
the fact that you're single, not being like loud and proud, just being like, I need to fit in. Tell me all about that. Let's unpack that a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, there's so much there. It was, you know, I look back on it now. All I ever wanted when I was in that world, I hated when people referred to me as a female sports reporter. All I ever
Mm,
wanted was to just be a sports reporter. And I look back now and I'm like, no, you are a woman.
yeah.
You were a female sports reporter. And by being female, by being a woman, I brought a different perspective to what it was that I was covering and to the stories that I was telling. And
Mm,
I tried to hide that as much as possible because I wanted to fit in, because you were in this world of men. And not only was I basically only interviewing men because I covered men's professional teams.
yeah.
I was also working alongside pretty much all male reporters from newspapers, radio, TV, all of the other colleagues that I had were predominantly men.
Mm,
And there was always this fear that people would think, oh, well, here's a woman in the locker room. Clearly, she's here to get a husband. Like, watch out for that one. If Laura gets a story, I mean, how did she get it? It's like, I lived in fear of people thinking
mm.
that
Did that
that's
ever
why I was there.
happen? Was that a genuine like
I,
possibility of something like that happening?
it happened. You never know what people are saying behind your back all the time, but I
Mm,
do know when other women broke stories, I would
yeah.
hear things from people like, oh, well, I remember one woman who was actually married to an executive with one of the teams. She was She is unbelievable. She is fabulous at her job. She is incredibly hard-nosed journalist, does everything the right way. And she used to break things all the time, break stories all the time. And everyone's response was, oh, it's because of her husband. It's because of her husband. And it had nothing to do with her husband. She had plenty of sources that were not her husband. But then, other things too, it was, oh, well, did you see what she's wearing in the locker room today? Did you see how she was over there talking to that athlete?
Yeah.
I would hear all of this and I would internalize it. So I was like, I have to reject it. I have to be like, I am not a woman.
So you're stuck between two worlds, really. One of being like, women and men are equal. I'm going to be as good as the men, as equal as the men, but you're also wanting to step into the power of being a woman and be like, I am a female reporter and I do things like this. And that, because I am a woman, it makes me good at my job because I have an empathetic side. This, it's tricky to balance it, isn't it?
Yeah, it was very, very tricky. And for so long, I didn't realize that there was that balance because I had gone so far over to have to pretend I am not a woman.
Overcorrecting.
Overcorrecting. And, pretending that the way I told a story, but it has to be exactly the way he did. And as I got more into the industry, as I had gained more experience and more confidence, I began to be more sure of myself and the way I told a story. So, certainly in the beginning of my career, I did a lot of imitation and then trying to do it exactly the way a man had done it so that I would be respected. I broke out of that to an extent, but there was still always this, this thing hanging over me of, I just want to fit in. I just want to be respected. And, it never helped that so often when I would meet somebody, whether it was people I would be meeting out on a story, people I'd be meeting on the job, when I'd meet viewers in person, one of the first questions I would always get is, oh, so do you like sports? Like, why? Why do you think I'm doing this if I didn't? But there was this idea, especially when I first got into the business, which was in 2002, and women in sports was not that common. And so a lot of people assumed that I was blonde, I was young, I was, decent looking. So, they just decided to put her in sports for diversity's sake. She doesn't necessarily
something
know
pretty to look at.
Exactly. And I was so afraid of people thinking that is who I was and why I was there. And so the fact that would be the question that I would get just continued to reinforce this idea that, okay, you have to keep proving yourself. You have to keep proving you're a guy. You have to keep proving you can do everything the guys can do and that you are no different when, I'm different. And you know what? Why should we try and have women come into the sports world so that they can act like men? Like, we want women to come into the sports world to be women and to bring their perspective.
In any world, in any realm, I think, we're so powerful as women. Like, we have a unique gift, yes, equal rights, but we are different. And I think we should celebrate how we're different. And I think that's a really interesting point, actually.
Agree with that. Oh, totally. In all realms of business, so many women come in and think, how many times, I know I do this, how many times do I type out a business email and I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to remove all of the exclamation points that I just put in because a man wouldn't do that. And so I shouldn't have exclamation points. And I'm like, but that's how I talk, that's a silly example, but women, all of us are different and we all have different strengths. We all have different things we bring to the table. And so this idea that we have to become something else in order to be successful is such a heavy thing to try and break out of.
And I guess if that's your job and that's day in, day out, you're constantly trying to adapt yourself to be something you're not, essentially, that bleeds into all areas of your life, doesn't it? And I guess these men, although they may have wives who, I'm guessing, work is more of their priority. So as a woman, how can you emulate what the man's doing there and still have a relationship and children, etc.? Because it doesn't work.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
Unless you've got a wife having a baby at home.
It's so true. Yeah, it's so true. I remember looking at, so I essentially kind of sacrificed my 20s from a personal standpoint, because in TV, I was basically moving every 2 years. I was getting a new job. You're trying to work up the ladder. I was never in one place for very long. And, I had women tell me that's what's going to happen. Expect that you are going to have to sacrifice a good deal of your personal life. And then they never really told me what would happen after that. But I looked around at my male colleagues who were going through the same process I was, who had started small, who were working their way up, who were moving constantly. And most of them had wives. Most of them were married. Most of them were starting to have kids. Oh my God, I went to so many baby showers of guys I worked with whose wives, were having babies. And that was seen as totally normal because, she'll just move with him. No problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm being told, what guy is going to want to move with you every 2 years? Like he's going to have a life and a career. And so it was really very much like, you have to just focus on your career. And that's the only thing you get. But your male counterparts, they get to do it all.
And their career gets to continue to grow. Whereas if you do decide to stop to have babies, then you kind of, especially in TV, I guess.
Yeah.
Then you come back. How do you make a comeback? And it's actually just a blooming minefield for women, isn't it?
Isn't it? Yeah, isn't it? And you worry so much about becoming irrelevant. Like if I step away for 6 months to have a baby and take care of that baby and be the mom that I want to be, I come back and everyone's like, wait, who are you? Or somebody else is already, the next big thing. And there's just so much pressure.
And the aging piece and the, weight gain that you might have when you get pregnant, heaven forbid.
I always knew if I stayed in TV that I had a shelf life as a woman, especially a woman in sports, that there would be some point where it would become very difficult for me to get a job because I always kind of thought of 40 as being around that age.
You gave yourself a time limit.
Yeah. Meanwhile, I would look over at the men next to me who could be, 75 and everyone was like, oh, they're so respected because they have so much experience. It's like, okay, if you see a 75-year-old woman up there, it's like, why hasn't she retired yet? If you can actually see that, which you usually do not in TV. So I always kind of knew like there's going to be a shelf limit to this and or a shelf life to this and a time limit for me. And so I was 38 when I got out of the business, and it felt like the right time for a lot of reasons.
So what led up to that then? Was it a good place in your career to end? Was it that you were coming to all these kind of realizations, as you said, like, wow, I don't think I've lived my true self for so many years? Take me through, like, what was leading up to you kind of having that total shift?
Yeah. And it was a complete shift. I was not enjoying it the way I should. And it had been that way for a few years. And this is the way I always knew it. When I was younger, when I was in my 20s and first starting out in this business, all I wanted was to cover the big events, a World Series, a Super Bowl, an NBA championship, any type of playoffs. I rooted for our teams that we covered because I was always in local news. I rooted so hard for them to do well because I wanted to cover these big, awesome events. Well, covering these big, awesome events, especially when you're in local news, is hard. It is so much work. You are live all morning, all night. You don't get any days off. It is absolutely exhausting. And it's very much a thankless business in a lot of ways, which is kind of what I found. Like, that's your job. You do it. You don't get extra praise for it. You don't get acknowledged because you're just supposed to do it. So as I was getting older and starting to kind of have all these realizations about like what the business really was that I was in, I found myself actively rooting and cheering against the teams I was covering. Like if they were the worst in the league, I was so happy because that meant no playoffs. That meant that I wasn't going to have to be working 21 days straight. It meant I wasn't going to have to be working 20-hour days. It was going to be easier. And
that was a bit of a light bulb moment. Like,
I was like, wait, so why am I doing this? I actually don't want to do any of the things that used to make this job that exciting.
Yeah.
And so that got me thinking, and I'm like, so, okay, what is it that I do enjoy about this? And there were a lot of things that happened that unfortunately I can't talk about from a legal standpoint, but there's a lot of inequalities in the TV business, and I stumbled upon quite a bit of them, and it was no longer a world I wanted to be in. It was not
Mm.
healthy for me. I was, and for a variety of reasons. And a huge part of that was I was tired of trying to be this perfect version of who I thought that I was supposed to be. I was tired of it. It was exhausting.
Yeah.
And was I was tired of talking to men about sports. Really. And
And that's okay.
yeah, nothing against the men who love sports,
Yeah.
who I talked to for years. Like, awesome. I love it. I was ready to do something different. I was really ready to be able to support women.
Yeah.
That is so important to me, because when I saw so many of these inequalities
Mm.
that I was experiencing, I knew I couldn't change any of it. It was too big. I was too small, and it was not a battle that I was going to be able to win. But if I could find ways to connect with women on a one-on-one, on a much smaller level, I
Mm.
I could help women with a lot of the things that I had gone through, to help
Mm.
them not put themselves in a position that I was in, or to not accept a lot of these stereotypes that are being placed upon us. So it became really appealing to me to be able to actually have a personal connection with people, with women in particular. Um,
Yeah.
and I just made the leap. I left TV, and I truly had no idea exactly what I was going to do or what any of that meant. So
Well done.
it took some time, and I was very, very fortunate, because my now husband and I were engaged at the time when I left, and we got married shortly thereafter. So
Aw.
he being able to be in a relationship allowed me to have some flexibility to figure out what I needed to do. I still had insurance coverage, things like that. So
Yeah.
I was very, very fortunate. But it got to the point where I decided I would rather not know what I was doing than to keep
Yeah.
doing what I was doing.
That's when you know. And I think, first of all, like, well done. Like, I don't mean that to sound patronizing at all, but, to actually detach yourself from what had become your identity. I am a sports reporter. What, okay, if you're not that, what are you now,
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and I can just imagine how exhausting that would be every day, kind of putting that mask on. It's your TV makeup. And it's like, but it's not the authentic you. And I think you can relate that maybe now to like the generation kind of underneath us and social media, like the exhaustion that people must feel of having a certain persona
Yes.
on social media. And you put your phone down and you're not actually living up to what's on your Instagram page, and it's like, I can imagine that would be the same kind of
Yeah.
exhaustion.
Oh my goodness. So, so true. I mean, the biggest challenge with leaving TV was one I was not prepared for at all. I had absolutely no idea how much of my own identity I had tied in to
Mm,
being on TV. I
yeah.
had no idea. So yeah, I didn't know who I was. And that was a very scary place to be for somebody who was so detail oriented, career oriented. In order to have success in a business like TV, where you're moving up and moving around, you are focused. So to go from this, like, this is who I am,
Yeah.
to I don't know,
I'm not
was
sure. Yeah.
terrifying. So what did I decide to do? At first I was like, oh, cool. I'm going to be like a fashion influencer because I love fashion. And
I
so
can see
that's,
all your shoes
yeah,
behind
there
you.
are shoes and bags behind me that have not been worn once during the pandemic, but I look at them and remember the good old days. But yeah, so that I just like, okay, I love fashion. I love, this is cool. My husband's a photographer. We can do this. This is going to be great. And then I stepped into, like you were just saying, it was another mask and I was then feeding into this new idea. It wasn't sports related anymore. It wasn't TV, but I was still feeding into this idea of how you should look. This should always be perfect. Your house can't be anything can be out of place. If you're going to take a picture, it has to be Pinterest worthy. And that's not real.
No.
And so it was when I had this fashion blog that I decided to start a series talking about my experiences before I met my husband and my experiences of being single. And I was like, this has nothing to do with fashion, but I feel like I need to talk about this.
Yeah.
Those were the most successful posts that I had. Those were the ones that people resonated with. And so that's when I thought, okay, all right. The fashion influencer thing was a cool idea for a couple of months. Now I'm figuring it out. Now I'm starting to decide. And so like a huge thing now that I also talk with women about is social media is not real. And all of these standards that we are setting ourselves up for and the way our lives are supposed to look. It's not the way her life looks either. I promise you. Not all
one
the time.
corner of her kitchen looks like that.
Exactly.
And I did like a little behind the scenes. I was recording in my kitchen and I was like, and there's all the washing up in the sink. That's what's really happening.
Exactly.
Hey, real quick, I really hope you're enjoying this interview. I just wanted to dive in and read you out a little message I got from one of the women in my Sweat It Squad. So Sweat It Squad is the membership community that I run that has all my health and fitness programs, all my mindset and motivation coaching, nutrition coaching, and absolutely everything. And I got this lovely message from Anna. She says, joining the Sweat It Squad has been one of the best decisions I have made. Learning the right way to eat without feeling like you're on a diet has been a game changer. Plus, I am stronger than ever. Thank you so much, Carys. So if you want to become part of the Sweat It Squad, you want to get amazing results with your health and fitness, not feel like you're on a diet, and come and join my little tribe and be supported by me along the way, then head over to sweatitsquad.com to join us today. All right, let's dive back into that interview. I can 100% relate to you because I used to be a professional dancer, and professional dancer, like, sounds glamorous. TV reporter sounds so glamorous. Like, you tell people that's what you are and that's your identity because it's your life. When you have a career like that, it's not like you go to work, you clock off. It's like, that is your identity. And when I did stop being a professional dancer, what the hell was I then? And I moved into a really similar story, really. I felt called to help women and motivate and, on a more personal level, really, really resonate with what you're saying. And I would always put, ex-professional dancer in my bio, because I just that's part of me. It's still really cool. And I still have that about me. And just in case you don't fully, believe me as a coach, I have got this. And you do have to just let pieces kind of shed away. And maybe that the fashion thing was a nice transition, and it made you kind of have an epiphany as well.
Yeah. I like that. I like how you said that, because I tend to, we're all so hard on ourselves. And I tend to look back and I'm like, really, that's what you thought you were going to do? You thought, but it does. It makes sense. It was a transition for me. It was I still got to, because my husband he's not a professional photographer, but he has professional photography skills, and was just, he and I would take gorgeous pictures. And it made me still feel like that element of when I was on TV, which
powerful, glamorous, like the shine.
It felt more like, it felt comforting to me because that's where I had always been for so long. And so it was a good transition. And now it's been, oh my gosh, it's been like over a year since we've done a photo shoot together. And all of the things that I post for the most part now are much more like everyday natural things, which is what speaks with how I feel good presenting myself now. But you're right. I needed that transition. I needed that moment to kind of go from this one very specific thing that was TV to what it was that I actually wanted to do.
Yeah. And it's TV. It's so shiny, isn't it? It's hard to let that go and to be like, oh, actually. And I guess as well, was hard for you to be like, oh, actually I'm struggling underneath, or what, you know, whatever your issues were that you're going through, because you are seen as, you know, yeah, but you're on TV, so how can you have any problems in your life? You know, you've
Exactly.
got money, you're successful, you're doing this, you're doing a job you love. Like, please don't
Yeah.
moan about any problems. I think that's part of the expectations of life as well. Like, you have to just like it or lump it kind of thing. Like, you've made your bed and lay in it. We don't want to hear you moan about it. And, you know, people see you in a certain way. They don't want that to be tarnished either.
Yeah, it's true. It's very true. And so it's, again, we're stepping into this persona that we have built instead of being able to actually be honest about what we're going through. So, I mean, I try to be this transition from TV, it's been 3.5 years, and I still consider myself to be in it to a certain extent. And it has been hard. And so I try to put a lot of emphasis on sharing that and making that clear, because so often when people go off and do something different, whether it is to start their own business, to start to start something, or whether they go create a new career and work for somebody else, we always talk about it from that end point. Like when you're already successful, when you're now, you know, that business you started, you're this coach now that's making 7 figures a year. And now I'm going to tell you what my journey was like, but I'm telling it to you from this point of, I now am hugely successful. And I'm not there. You know, who knows what there is and what will ever happen. I want to be totally honest. Like, it's hard when you're in the middle of doing anything, but especially a career change, a life change. It is freaking hard, you know, and there are moments where you're like, what did I do? There are many moments for me, at least, where I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. Why do I think that I know what I'm doing? And that it is not just A to B, this straight linear line that takes you to success. And so being able to share like my own personal struggles and wondering, am I doing the right thing? Like that all of this is normal. You're
in the trenches now.
Yeah, exactly. And so let's talk about it from that perspective in terms of, you know, we're all struggling. And even when you do get to that point where you are, whatever you decide is mega successful and you've made it, your life still isn't perfect. There's new struggles. Exactly. And so I want to be honest about that.
I think that's a great point, because you do get now a lot of, like, you know, whether it's business coaches or whatever kind of coaches, success coaches, money coaches, whatever. And they are, you know, at the point you want to be at, and here's, you know, the steps of how to get there. But it's all very good looking back in hindsight, but it's your path can go wherever it goes on the little tiny decisions you make. And I don't know if you can actually really even teach someone that. So more of being like a companion to someone through it, and getting that like back and forth and like, I've just been through this, so, you know, what are the best methods that I came up with in that moment, rather than kind of getting to the end of like being peaceful and successful and zen and whatever it is, and then saying, oh, now you just do 1, 2, 3 because that's how easy it is.
Exactly. And when you are in this position of your job is to help people get from point A to point B. That's why they're paying you. That's where your business comes from. You then have this feeling and this pressure that you cannot show you're struggling, because then why would people pay you? Because they don't want to get to a point where they're struggling, but there is no point where you're not struggling. Like there's always something. And, you know, I work a lot with single women and helping single women accept and embrace the life that they have. And one of my huge messages to them is, you know, I did find someone. I found someone. I am married. I am so in love. He is my person. And I am so fortunate that it happened when it did. And it's great. But my life is so far from perfect. I mean, we got married, and 2 weeks after our wedding, my father-in-law was diagnosed with cancer. And 4 weeks later, my father was. So, you know, this beautiful, perfect, it finally happened for me.
Fairy tale.
I finally have him. And then all that happened. And then we began this whole journey of trying to have a baby and trying to start a family and IVF, and it wasn't working and things were failing. And oh my gosh, I would say that some of the hardest, if not the hardest times of my life have come after I met my husband. So just getting into that relationship did not make my life perfect.
Yeah.
Because there's no such thing.
No. And I can relate to that. So I'm essentially a weight loss coach, although I absolutely hate to say that, because there's just so many more things to unpack on that journey that have nothing to do with weight loss, but it's the same thing. Women think when I lose the weight, I'll then be happy. I'll get to that end point. It's like when I'll be in a relationship, I'll then be happy. But just circling back a little bit to, what you were saying about, being able to coach women from a place when you're not perfect, I think then that's when that imposter syndrome starts to knock on the door and be like, who are you to tell people? Or you tell yourself that people are thinking that you think that people are thinking that about you. And it actually what you've obviously discovered, and I have been on the journey of discovering myself as a coach, is like, actually people are so much more likely to not only get good results with you, to continue to work with you, to have a much better experience if you actually are fully open, raw, real. And, in my industry, it is like, I had a glass of wine and some ice cream on the couch last night.
Yeah.
I'm not making avocado cacao ice cream every night. You know what I mean? Like, I think, I was scared to be vulnerable and share that side of me before. I thought, no, I need to just only share pictures of healthy food or whatever, it comes with that maturity, I think. But I think it's just so refreshing. I really just love everything you're saying.
Yeah. Oh, well, and I love what you're saying too. And it makes, I had to start thinking about the people that I would want to give money to, or the people I would want to learn from. What do I want from them? And I don't want them to be perfect.
Alienates you.
It does. It makes you feel even more like you're screwing up, like you're not doing it right. I am so appreciative when someone that I look up to, who I am taking advice from, who I feel like I'm really learning from, can then say, I really struggled with this, or I'm having a tough time right now. Like it helps you to give yourself a break when you're going through a tough time, because this is the way, this is life. This is how it goes,
It's messy. It's so damn messy.
Oh my gosh, it is. And it's we do such a disservice to each other when all we do is show the good stuff and the perfect stuff. And social media is just so prevalent now. It is such a part of our lives. And that perfectly curated idea of life that is perpetuated on it is so difficult to take in on a constant basis.
And I mean, we pick up the phone to record an Instagram story or whatever we're doing when we're in a good place.
Yes.
We're rarely picking up the phone to be like, I'm having a really shit day, or I'm having the most boring day in the world. I'm filing my taxes. Like, you don't do it. So it's kind of inevitable, but it's just so, I can see a movement coming through now of lots of women being really real, but it's almost becoming a bit of a trend, which then I always am a bit like, when things become a trend of like, oh, look at my, this is me. I've got rolls, I've got body fat, and they're like 10% body fat and really forcing a roll on the belly. I'm like, come on.
Oh my gosh, you're the ones who say it's a no makeup selfie. And I'm like, but you're using a filter.
You're using a filter and a ring light.
Exactly. Exactly. And oh my goodness, too, the especially in the world that you are in,
it's crazy.
apps that you can use to make yourself look different are terrifying.
It's unbelievable. I don't even know why you would want to do that. And it comes back to that thing. It's like that putting on that mask and not being authentic. Like, surely that person who's using those apps to adjust their body, how could you even go out of the house? What if you bumped into someone who's seen your Instagram? Like, surely that is so anxiety inducing. Like, whenever I feel like I'm not turning up authentically for my audience, I feel a bit of anxiety. Like, I feel like I just need to be honest with you guys. I need to be real. And then I feel like, good. All right. If I'd had photos like an Instagram model on my Instagram, I might be like, rich and famous by now, but I don't think my nerves could handle it.
Yeah, no, oh my gosh, I so agree. It doesn't make any sense to me, but I do, I do understand the desire to be able to put out this perfect image, and that we want to buy into that's part of who we could be, but it's not who we are. And there's nothing wrong with that. And my gosh, who wants to be perfect? It first of all, it doesn't exist, but it's exhausting to try and keep maintaining that image and that idea of what is perfect. And
boring.
Yeah.
I don't want perfect friends. I like friends who like quirky and they're like, have good conversations. I love that. I think that a lot of women will relate to that. Just like take the pressure off. You don't have to be perfect. As you said, there's no timeline for life. You can weave your way through it. It's blooming messy. Everyone's life is messy. It's okay.
Yes.
I would love to dive into next, if you're okay talking about it, into a little bit more of like how you met your husband and your journey together, maybe trying for children later on in life and the ups and downs. I know there are a lot of women in my world, in my circle, who are going through the same thing, and a lot of listeners to this podcast as well. I've spoken to a lot of people personally, and I think that would be a lovely topic to touch on if you feel comfy.
Definitely. Yep. Definitely.
Good.
I'm an open book, and I feel it's so important to be able to talk about these things. And especially when it comes to, having kids and struggling with infertility and going through IVF and pregnancy loss and all of these things that we don't talk about.
No.
We do not talk about enough, because it's a very personal and isolating experience that so many of us don't want to talk about, which I understand. I completely understand, which just then makes us feel even more isolated and more alone and more like there's that we're the only people who are going through this. And that's, so yeah, I'm happy to talk about any of this. Where do you want me to begin? Do you want me to tell you how I met my husband?
Yeah, let's start with the romance. Let's start there.
Well, we met on Match.com. We are one of the rare online dating success stories.
My brother got married from something like Match.com.
Nice. Yeah, it happens. It happens every now and then. So yeah, we met online. I had kind of had my own, after years of really doing a lot of self-reflection and trying to figure out why I was making myself so miserable about being single when so much else in my life was good. I had started to come to a lot of realizations, and realized that one of the biggest things that had been holding me back was that I had been telling myself that my life and my future hinged upon meeting somebody, having kids, and all of that. So when I didn't have it, I really wasn't giving myself a future. I wasn't allowing anything to be possible. So I finally started letting go of a lot of those beliefs and allowing myself to imagine a life for me that I could create, things that actually were within my control. Because when it comes to relationships, so much is out of our control. We can't make someone come into our life. We can't make someone love us. So much is out of our control. Yeah. And there's so much luck that comes into it of when someone, at the end of the day, I got so lucky that at that moment when I was ready to meet this man, that I found him online, that we connected, that we were both in a place that we were compatible. And that it happened at that time when it did. And that's the bottom line. It's not because I came to some huge like self-realization and this place of Zen that I manifested him. And, a lot of people love the idea of manifestation, and I don't want to knock that, but I also don't want to make it seem like that's the only way for things to happen. Like there's a lot of luck and timing. Exactly.
And I think we're often like, oh, there's like a secret key for a
Yeah.
secret door. And when we find it, our life will unlock and like all this stuff will happen.
Exactly. And it's just not true.
Yeah.
So we met, and I knew he was different right away. It was not, I didn't go home and say, oh, I'm going to marry this man, because I had thought things like that before after first dates that went so well and then I never heard from him again. So I was like, I'm going to be realistic about this. All I know is I want to see him again. I want to get to know him more. I want to talk to him more. I don't want to not see him again. And that's how the first few dates that we had went. And then I got to this point where I was like, okay, no, this is special.
He's good.
Yeah, I'll keep him.
Yeah.
So we were together for about 6 or 7 months, I think, when we moved in together.
Wow.
We were both in New York City. That's when your lease was up. Ours happened to be up at about the same time. So we're like, well, I mean, we kind of know we're not kids. We're not 25. I was 36. He was 38. We're like, okay, I think we're okay with this. We moved in together. We knew that we were going to get married. We ended up getting married about 3 years after we met in Mexico on a beach in front of our friends and family. It was just, it was lovely. It was absolutely wonderful. And so we're married, and I had been struggling a lot with the idea of kids before I met him, because I had always assumed I would be a mom. It was just a given, natural. Yeah. Like I didn't know details. I didn't know how it would all work, but I was going to be a mom, obviously, because that's what you do.
Yep.
So here I was in my mid-30s without a boyfriend, going, well, I'm not getting younger. So what exactly, how is this supposed to happen? So I started thinking about having kids on my own. Should I be freezing my eggs? Should I be starting that process? And for me, I came to the realization that I didn't just want to be a mom. I wanted to be a family. So for me, I understood that my drive to have children was to be able to have them with my person, to be able to be in that relationship and then have a child together. Yeah. So that was actually a really freeing moment for me, because it helped take the pressure off. Should I be doing this on my own? Should I be focusing on all of that? And instead I let that go, and I had to accept the idea that, well, then I might not be a mom. If it doesn't go the way that I want it to, it might not happen. And
did that feel sad and heavy, or did that feel kind of light and like, okay, let's see what happens then?
It was a little of both.
Right.
Because, when you think for so long that this is what's going to happen for you, acknowledging that it might not, and finding ways to be okay with it maybe not happening, I think was part of what made me so comfortable with who I was by the time I did meet my husband, because I was starting to accept that things weren't necessarily going to go the way I thought they would. And that didn't mean that my life was over. That didn't mean that I couldn't have a future, that I couldn't have something beautiful that I would create. My brother had one child at that time. He now has 3. I was like, I'm going to be the best aunt ever. Like I will still be able to surround myself with children.
I think it's as well, perhaps like us giving ourselves these labels and feeling comfy when you're in a label, like, okay, I'm, in the corporate world. Okay, now I'm a mom. And it is as well, just as we said earlier, like when you take away that label, that potential label that you could have, like, okay, then I guess I really have to get to know me because there's nothing else going to be covering that. And, I became a mum. My girlie is nearly 2 now. And I definitely feel like I have that label now. I have a new stamp now.
Yeah.
And first of all, that was like all consuming. And then I've started to like claw my way back to like, hang on, I am someone without being a mum, although I do love being a mum. Do you know, it's the identity of it all, I guess.
Oh, totally. Totally. And this idea that like, there's only one thing.
Yeah,
if you're a mom and you're a really good mom and you want to focus on it, well, then you can't be professional too, or, we tell ourselves and society tells us so many different stories about who we're supposed to be. So when I did meet my husband, I was like, all right, well, here's my person. I'm going to have my kids. Like this is it. I finally met the person. And my husband has a genetic condition that, is pretty serious and could potentially mean that a baby who had it would not survive.
Right.
So I started doing all of my research. There's a 50% chance that he could pass it down. So it became pretty clear that for us, if we were going to have kids, that IVF would be the route that we would go. So by the time we were married, I was 38 when we got married. We had, like I had mentioned, my father-in-law got sick, my dad got sick, both ended up passing away within about a year and a half of that. And so life happened. Things get pushed back. We're trying to figure out what to do. And we had to get my husband diagnosed. It's a very long story. What he has is so incredibly rare that he had never actually been diagnosed with it. So it took me over a year to find a doctor. There's only 2 in the country that can diagnose him, to finally find one, to get that going, to get the genetic testing done so that we could actually go to an IVF clinic and start talking to a lab about doing a genetic testing on embryos. And by the time all this happened, I was 40. And it was like, okay, well, this is going to be fine, because even though I'm 40, I have no reason to think that, other than potentially my age, that I have any, fertility issues, because I had never tried to get pregnant before. And so I had this naive belief that the only reason we had to do IVF was just so that they could test out my husband's condition. And so meanwhile, we started IVF. Well, we were supposed to start IVF in March of 2020, which
COVID timing.
Wonderful. Which shut everything down. And so, all non-necessary medical procedures were postponed. So we had to wait.
Sad.
We had to wait a few months. Then we started. Our first round failed, and it failed largely because of my eggs. And they were not in the quantities that we had hoped, and they were also not the quality that we had hoped. And so, here we are. I go from thinking we're doing IVF to simply weed out my husband's condition, and that's it. It's just, it's just kind of just a little thing we have to do, and it's fine.
And then we'll be pregnant, and then it's like this and this will happen.
Everything will work out. And when we
that key to unlock that door again,
and then it will be perfect, and then then our life will begin. And when we got the genetic results back and found out that not a single one of the embryos was healthy, because they were all chromosomally abnormal, because likely the quality of my eggs. Oh my goodness, as a woman, to come across this like idea now that your body can't do what it's naturally supposed to do, which, we tell ourselves that you're supposed to be able to have kids. That's your
purpose.
Exactly. That's the innate reason that women are women and men are men. Like women, you are supposed to be able to have babies. And so I felt like such a failure, because I was letting us down. I was letting my husband down. I was letting myself down. Like my body became not my enemy, but I really wrestled with it, because it wasn't doing what I thought it was supposed to do. So we did a second round, also was a failure. And then we did a third round, and that third round we did back in December. And once again, it did not work. We did not have a single embryo that was viable. And once again, it was because of the chromosomal abnormalities that I was responsible for. And so our doctors went from telling us after that first round that their main message was, this is just bad luck. You guys, it's just, you're the victims of bad luck. It's just a numbers game. We can get, if we keep trying.
Lots of hope there.
I did. While I still felt like I was failing in some way, I still had this hope We got through that third round, and the message changed, and it became, the doctor saying, this might not happen. You might not be able to produce. First of all, I wasn't producing enough eggs for us to be able to like weed out the ones that weren't going to be quality and then still have some in reserve. It's such a numbers game when you go through IVF, and my numbers, we were not starting out with strong numbers because my body just wasn't producing enough eggs. So we had this really, really difficult moment after that third round. So it was just this past December, because I was started to really wrestle with this idea of when and how do you decide to stop trying?
Yeah.
How do you actually make that decision? Because my doctor had said, we will keep doing this. We'll do as many rounds as you want. We are here to help you. We will try and come up with different ways to get a different result. He's like, we'll keep doing this. But you have to decide what's best for you and when it's
emotionally
time.
I guess, like, can I go through the ringer time and time again?
Emotionally and physically, like my body, we'd been doing it for almost a year at that point. My body was not my own. I had, the injections, the hormones, the mood swings, the bloating that you have because of the injections. When you're going through a round of IVF, the stimulation process, you can't work out. You can't do rigorous activity. So you're just like, I put on so much weight. Also, it was during COVID, which is such a weird time anyway for all of us. It was just, and then the emotional side of it, the waiting, every single step, there was a waiting process to get to the next. And it was just so difficult mentally and emotionally to deal with for both myself and my husband. And
yeah, of course.
And our families who were so invested in it with us. So we ended up deciding, we found out, we thought that we had thankfully a very, very good insurance program through my husband's job. And so we thought they would only cover 3 rounds. We found out they would cover another. So we were like, okay, let's do a 4th round.
Yeah.
But we're going to do it in secret. We're not going to tell anyone. I could not take my family along for the ride.
Yeah. I think that's why we don't talk about these things so much, because it emotionally, like telling everyone all the time, it's a lot, isn't it? So yeah. I think it's important when you can speak out and when you're in a place where you can, that you do, because otherwise we're all just like holding these things inside.
Yeah. It's so true. And I know why women don't talk about this stuff. I wasn't talking about it publicly. I had mentioned that we had done IVF. I had mentioned that we had multiple failed rounds, but I was not getting into it. And there are some women who, and I applaud them, who are detailing out every step of the process, which is so helpful for so many people. But I was not in a mental place to be able to do that. I was in survival mode.
Yeah.
And for us, survival mode even became, we can't even tell our moms, because I can't have my mom, I can't have one more phone call or text saying, any updates? Like, I love you. And I know that you only want the best. Yeah. But I can't do it.
Yeah.
So we did our super secret 4th round at the very end of December, had the retrieval in January. And there was it was a different feeling because we were just doing it ourselves. Like the only people who knew were my husband and me, our doctors and nurses, and the insurance company. That's that is it. And we ended up with 1 healthy embryo. And so I just announced this yesterday, but I'm actually pregnant. Oh my God. I'm almost 23 weeks as we're recording this. And so it's been such a journey and such a roller coaster, and oh my God, but here we are. And yeah, so it's crazy
now, Laura. I'm like speechless. I'm like, I've got to do a podcast. Oh my goodness. How are you feeling? Like,
it's, and we talked about this kind of at the beginning of our conversation a little bit, about how when you do have something you've fought for, that you've wanted, that you have this thing, then you should not complain about any of it. Like everything should be great. And so, I finally got pregnant. I finally was in this place, and my whole first trimester was rough. I felt so terrible. It was brutal. And I kept saying to my husband, and we hadn't told anybody other than our close family and friends, but I just kept saying to my husband, I'm like, I feel so terrible. This is awful, but I cannot complain. I have no right to complain because I wanted this so badly. And I would have 6 months ago, I would have begged to be feeling this terrible. I'm like, but so I can't complain. And I had to, he was like, yes, you can. Yes, you can complain. This is uncomfortable. You don't
part of the kind of rite of passage of being pregnant, that you're allowed to complain about the first trimester. But I've seen that a lot on like women on the social media or whatever who are in the trying to conceive world, and then they're like sensitive post, and then they're like, I feel like shit. But people don't want to hear that because they want to hear all the good stuff. But it was rough that first trimester, and you can't tell anyone.
Yes. Oh my God. Well, and that's the thing about the first trimester that shocked me, was that because nobody talks about the first trimester, because you're not telling anybody publicly really that you're pregnant. Savage. So by the time I'm in it, I'm like, no one told me this. No one told me I was going to both want to throw up and be hungry at the exact same time. Like, why did no one tell me this?
Like, I can't get out of bed until I've eaten a cracker.
Yes. And now I feel like I'm going to throw up. Like and nobody talked about this stuff. And I was so grateful. My sister-in-law, who has three beautiful children, and she was like, she's been very honest with me. And as soon as we found out we were pregnant and I was starting that whole nightmare first trimester, she was like, I hated it. I want you to know I hated it. All I ever wanted was to be out of the first trimester. And I was like, it's okay to say that? It's okay to say that. Oh my gosh. Okay. All right. I'm not
you still love your baby. You just hate feeling like you're hungover every day.
Oh, that's exactly what it is. You feel hungover all the time. Like, and I didn't even get to drink. So like, I didn't even get to have that fun part. Cool.
I know. It's what I was explaining to everyone all the time. Like, I just imagine your worst hangover, but you didn't have the fun night before. It's just savage. So you're in that lovely stage now where it's lifted in your energy. And are you showing? Have you got a little
Yep. I'm showing, but I'm not uncomfortable yet. So I'm trying very much to enjoy these blissful weeks, because
so good.
I know pretty soon, and she's just started kicking. So,
you're having a girl.
I do. Yes.
Oh my God. Oh, it's just like, so wonderful. I've got goosebumps. Yeah.
So the little kicks are wonderful. And I know that at some point I'm going to be like, kid, you're kicking me so much that can you take a break? But for now, it's wonderful.
It's good to know that it's going to get worse. But I tell you, just to tell you a different story, I felt fantastic right up until the end. Awesome. Like, I had a great pregnancy. I felt awful in the first trimester, but I never had that uncomfortable thing. I never had the get off my bladder. So it doesn't, you might be lucky and you might feel like amazing right way through to the end.
Yeah, it's possible. It's possible.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. What a beautiful ending to a fantastic story. But as we know, because as we've chatted about, this is actually not the fairy tale ending. We know now there's going to be loads of messy shit coming after this. So you're going to have to deal with.
God. Yep.
She's going to become a parental coach later, further down the line, when she's in the trenches of that.
Exactly. So no, it's exciting. And this is just the beginning of the next round of challenges. So that's
the
life.
Fun begins. Oh, it's so wonderful. Listen, Laura, thank you so much for such a, authentic and inspiring and just really fun chat today. I've absolutely loved having you on as a guest.
Oh, it's been wonderful. Thank you so much for having me. This was a lot of fun.
Oh, you're so welcome. Now, tell all the ladies who are listening if they want to go follow you and your journey, and where's the best place to go find you?
Wonderful. Well, I'm on Instagram. I'm very active on Instagram at Laura B. Behnke. The last name is Behnke. I also have my website, laurabehnke.com. I do coaching, one-on-one coaching. I have some availability now if anybody is looking for support in shedding these societal norms and these expectations that we have and figuring out how to move forward in the life that you've actually created. You can find out much more information there. And my podcast is called the Life Actually Podcast, and you can listen to that wherever you get your podcasts.
Amazing. So if you're on your podcast app right now, just go type that in, the Life Actually Podcast, and you can go listen to more about Laura. And I know you've had some incredible guests on yours as well.
It's wonderful. It's all about women sharing their stories so that we can get to this idea that there's no one story.
Yeah, I love it. It's so refreshing and like the weight being lifted and it's freeing, I guess is the word. Agreed. Fantastic. Well, have a beautiful day. Enjoy yourself and your bump. And thank you so much for being on.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening, guys. I really hope you enjoyed that one. I had such a blast having a really cool conversation with Laura, and I hope you enjoyed it too. Make sure you go listen to her podcast, go connect with her on Instagram, tag us both in, screenshot this, tag us in on your stories. I want to know what your biggest takeaway was from this interview and what you enjoyed about it the most. Have a blooming wonderful day, and I will see you in the next episode.